You probably got the wrong two guys. Because we believe in being honest, you know.
Hi everyone, Nemo here. Quentin L. Cook says he believes in being honest, but do his public utterances as an apostle in the church support that professed belief?
With respect to slavery, our scriptures had made it clear that no man should be in bondage to another.
Well, that throws Brigham Young under the bus, because he seemed to think the scriptures did teach that men should be in bondage to one another. I will remark, with regard to slavery, inasmuch as we believe in the Bible, inasmuch as we believe in the ordinances of God, in the priesthood and order and decrees of God, we must believe in slavery. It is also simply not true, according to D&C 134:12. We believe it just to preach the gospel to the nations of the earth, and warn the righteous to save themselves from the corruption of the world. But we do not believe it right to interfere with bondservants, neither preach the gospel to, nor baptize them contrary to the will and wish of their masters, nor to meddle with or influence them, in the least to cause them to be dissatisfied with their situations in this life, thereby jeopardizing the lives of men. Such interference we believe to be unlawful and unjust, and dangerous to the peace of every government, allowing human beings to be held in servitude. I would say, given examples of slavery being condoned in the church's own unique scriptures, and the words of a prophet that are like scripture in LDS theology,
All the standard works of the church contain the mind and will of the Lord for us in this last dispensation. In addition to these great foundational scriptures, we are blessed with continuing revelation to living prophets.
I don't think it's honest of Elder Cook to paint the picture that our own scriptures are clearly against slavery. It's also dishonest to try and paint the image that it was the anti-slavery attitudes of early saints that caused opposition to them in Missouri and Joseph Smith's incarceration in Liberty Jail.
The prophet Joseph and a few choice associates had been unjustly imprisoned in Liberty Jail. One of the reasons for the violent opposition to our members was most of them were opposed to slavery.
Something important to establish: when was Joseph in jail? What were the attitudes of the church at the time? And why was Joseph actually in jail? Joseph Smith's 1838 incarceration takes place in the backdrop of the Mormon-Missouri War. That's right, war. If you were ever taught the narrative that Latter-day Saints were driven out of Missouri for no good reason, then buckle up. In short, Joseph was in Liberty Jail on charges of treason because of actions during this war. The court records for the time are linked in the description. Feel free to explore the exact nature of the charges and actions for yourself. And while you're down there, feel free to hit the like button. Joseph was in jail on charges of treason, murder, arson, burglary, robbery, larceny, and perjury. That's why he was in there. But what were the attitudes of the members of the church at the time to slavery? Joseph Smith said in 1838, question 13th, are the Mormons abolitionists? No, unless delivering the people from priestcraft and the priests from the power of Satan should be considered abolition. But we do not believe in setting the Negroes free. But then he would later go on to say, in his 1844 campaign for President of the United States, petition also, ye goodly inhabitants of the slave states, your legislators to abolish slavery by the year 1850, or now, and save the abolitionists from reproach and ruin, infamy and shame. Pray Congress to pay every man a reasonable price for his slaves out of the surplus revenue arising from the sale of public lands, and from the deduction of pay from the members of Congress. Break off the shackles from the poor black man. These two quotes serve to prove that while the church was at times anti-slavery and at other times pro-slavery, or perhaps ambivalent, in 1838 when Joseph Smith was jailed, the prevailing sentiment was not, as Elder Cook put it,
Most of them were opposed to slavery.
Elder Cook, please, again, stop trying to paint a dishonestly simplified narrative, when the truth of it is far more complex. Stop being dishonest about a virtuous LDS position towards slavery, which did not exist in the examples you are giving. It's also flagrantly dishonest to say,
Political candidates understand that. They don't ever come to the church and say, what should I do?
just take a look at this.
It's a little frustrating from our perspective to
have people saying, well, is he going to follow some kind of a policy line that the church has? We have a long record in the church of not interfering with public officials, some of whom are on all sides of almost all public opinions. There's been no evidence of any effort to influence that in any way. The members understand that. Political candidates understand that. They don't ever come to the church and say, what should I do?
Did you hear that? That was some very lawyerly language there used by Elder Cook.
There's been no evidence of any effort to influence that in any way.
But what if I told you there was? In this next clip, Ralph Hardy, a church authority.
Elder Hardy's a lawyer, but I don't know when he ever does any legal work. He works full-time for the church.
Was introducing Senator Gordon Smith to a meeting of senior church leaders. Although 2 years after the Ballard video, Elder Cook was in attendance.
Senator, what are the concerns as you've been there in Washington that you think we ought to be most aware of? What are the forces that you're most concerned about as a senator that you think could really be difficult for us?
When Ralph Hardy said,
though I can't remember any Latter-day Saints that were permanent members of his staff, it was fair to say that his staff in the Senate was church broke. In fact, not many months ago, his legislative director called me on the phone and he said, Ralph, you haven't called us for 6 weeks. What are we supposed to be doing?
Ralph Hardy here is describing a relationship between Senator Gordon Smith's legislative director and the LDS church leaders, in which Senator Gordon Smith's staff are instructed as to what to do by those church leaders. It doesn't matter to what extent they were instructed, it flies directly in the face of what Quentin L. Cook said.
Political candidates understand that. They don't ever come to the church and say, what should I do?
Senator Smith himself said,
what I regarded as my role as one who regards his temple recommend as more important than an election certificate.
And as for,
we have a long record in the church of not interfering with public officials.
Just take a look at this.
Because there is nothing quite as effective as when Ralph Hardy calls me and says, we need a meeting in Rome, we need a meeting in Madrid, we need a meeting in Belgium. A U.S. senator can get those meetings.
I just can't stress what it means to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to have which we've had five temple recommend carrying high priest in the United States Senate, and a large number in the House of Representatives. What it means to the transaction of business, to have access, to be able to influence decisions, to reach beyond our shores. And as I said in my introduction, what Senator Smith has done, and I can say the same for our other brethren of both parties, it is of inestimable value to this church.
There may not have been any evidence in 2007 when Elder Cook recorded that video, but there sure is now. Senator Smith served from 1997 until 2009. He was serving when Elder Cook said,
we have a long record in the church of not interfering with public officials.
When there was a United States Senator and his staff taking some level of instruction from church leaders about how to act, and the implication we've just heard is that it applies to all 5 senators they have had in the Senate up until that time. This next 30 seconds really sums that up.
Ralph asked me to see if I could get an appointment with the the Indian ambassador of the United States, Ambassador Sen. I did, and they come immediately to a senator's office. Ambassador Sen is a very quiet and meek man, a very nice person. And I began the meeting with Ralph's permission, representing the United States.
Ralph Hardy, representing the church, asked for Senator Gordon Smith to arrange a meeting with the Indian ambassador. And in that meeting, Senator Smith sought permission from the church's representative to act in his capacity representing the United States. He showed deference to the church and its representatives over his obligations as a senator. Again, as with slavery and Joseph Smith's incarceration at Liberty Jail, Quentin L. Cook is making a dishonest and oversimplified claim about the church's level of influence over LDS public officials. His claims are not supported by the evidence that he himself would go on to witness and likely already had. His denial that the church does not seek to exercise influence over public officials and elected officers is simply not true. Now, I do receive criticisms that say I don't share the positives often enough. So here is a moment of honesty from Quentin L. Cook.
We didn't have revelation there was going to be a pandemic